Hey everybody, John Flino here from Insightful Recordings, and today I have a quick trick that you can use to make your snares sound a lot bigger. This is a trick I use in pretty much all of my mixes, especially heavy music, so hopefully you'll find a place for it in your mixing routine. So we have just a little drum pattern, it's MIDI and it's slate drums. So nothing crazy, and I've done a tiny bit of mixing. I've just added an EQ and a compressor to pretty much all the tracks. So since it's a snare that we're focusing on, let's get a little loop going on here. Solo out the snare. And here's what my processing is looking like. Just a little bit EQ, a little bit of compression. Here's the before and after. And after. Just cleaned it up a little bit and added a tiny bit of compression. Now the first step for the trick that we're going to do today is making a new aux track. So we'll make that right after the snare track, stereo, aux. And we're going to name it snare dub just because that's the name I like. And we're going to make the input a bus. I already had that snare dub name, so we're going to use that. And we're going to be sending our snare track over to that track. We're going to put the fader right at unity, and we'll be setting it to pre-fader. That way, by moving this snare fader, we're not actually affecting the volume of the snare double track. Now, we're going to be using two plugins on this track, mainly. The first one is going to be a compressor. I choose this one called Devil Lock from Sound Toys. It's pretty aggressive, but it's going to get me exactly the sound that we want. Oh, don't forget to set the output of your new snare double track to the same bus that you have the rest of your drums going to. You want to treat this as basically another snare mic. Now, you don't have to use Devil Lock. I'm just choosing to use it because I really like the sound of it. You could use any compressor, but we're going for a really aggressive over-the-top sound. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to ignore using this crush knob because I don't quite like moving it past one, but this crunch here is what we're going to be focusing on. Let me get a little loop going of the first bar, and I am going to hit play. Just slowly going to bring that up until we get an extended snare sound. It's going to sound really obnoxious right now, but the goal is basically to extend the length of the snare. So we start getting a little bit of noise when we get to up to 5-ish, so we're going to bring it back down a little bit. I like it at 3. It sounds pretty good there. Let's hear it before and after. Now, don't worry about how loud this track is right now. We're going to be mixing it in under the normal snare track a little bit later on. But for now, we're going to keep it loud so that we can hear what we're doing. All right, so that's all we're going to do with that compressor. Now we're going to throw on a reverb. I choose Reverb because, again, I really like the sound of it. We're going to be picking a room type of reverb. And I really want the time to be pretty short, right about like 0.9, maybe right around 1 second. And we're going to adjust the EQ here so that we take out some of the high end, because this compressor is going to be adding a lot of hissiness to it that we don't want too exaggerated. And we're going to take out a little bit of the low end just so we don't have any extra low end frequencies battling. So let's hear what we have. Reverb sounds pretty good. I don't want it to be 100% wet. So I'm going to bring down the ratio to about like 70 something. So let's hear him before and after the reverb. Maybe a little bit less wet. Cool. I'm liking the way that's sounding right now. One thing you'll notice is that we're getting a little bit of extra ringing coming from that snare because there is such heavy compression on it. So what we're going to do is just add another EQ and pull a little bit of that out. Now, feel free to be a little bit drastic with the EQ here because we already have that frequency coming in on the regular snare track. We don't need it to be completely pushed upward on this overcompressed track. So I think that sounds a little bit cleaner. Now let's hear it in the mix. So yeah, right now it's sounding cool, but obviously that is a little bit much. So we're gonna bring the fader for that snare double track all the way down and slowly creep it back in until we get a mix of the original and the double to a point where we really like it. Again, the goal is basically to get a much heavier, more extended snare sound. Now, this is where it kind of comes down to preference. You're really going to want to pick a mix here that suits the type of music that you're working on. If you're doing a heavier band, you're really going to want to push this up because you can really get over the top with heavy stuff and get away with it. But if you're doing lighter stuff and you're just trying to get a little more fatness into your snare, you might want to pull it down a bit more. I kind of like it right around here. Now, let's give it a listen before and after. So here's muted and unmuted. Just realized I had this EQ to pull out the ring on the snare double bypass, so we'll unbypass that. So one more time before and after. Again, that might be a little much. I don't want it to take over the regular snare track. I just want it to accent it a little bit. Cool, and that's basically the sound we're going for. I don't really need to do much more than that. Later on in the mix, I might bring this up or down depending on how everything else sounds around it, but I think we're at a pretty good spot right now. So I hope you got something out of this trick. I hope you can use it in your mixes, and I hope you learned something. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and let me know if there's any other stuff you want to learn about.